The spring of 1945 in Europe was a time of intense tension, uncertainty, and rapid movement. World War II was nearing its conclusion, yet the final days revealed conflicts among the Allies themselves. The world believed that victory was near, but no one anticipated the drama that would unfold in Austria. Patton, known for his audacity, made a move that shocked the entire Allied command. He advanced American troops into Vienna before the Soviet forces arrived. This bold maneuver was more than a tactical choice. It was a political statement, a clash of egos, and a moment that could reshape post-war Europe. Eisenhower, the supreme Allied commander, faced a dilemma that would test diplomacy, strategy, and the delicate balance among the victorious nations. From the very moment Patton's forces approached Vienna, rumors spread through the Allied headquarters. Military officers debated whether the move was genius or reckless. Some argued that seizing Vienna first would secure a stronger American influence in Central Europe. Others feared it might provoke the Soviets, whose armies were already stretched across Eastern Europe and eager to claim their share of the spoils. Reports flowed in with increasing urgency. American troops had captured key suburbs, bridges were under control, and resistance in the city was minimal. Patton's speed and decisiveness made the achievement almost inevitable. But at what cost to Allied unity? Eisenhower's office buzzed with telegrams, maps, and intelligence reports. Advisors expressed concern that Patton's actions could be interpreted as an attempt to undermine agreements made at Yalta, where post-war spheres of influence had already been tentatively outlined. Political leaders back in Washington awaited updates, unaware of the immediacy of the tension, while Eisenhower faced the impossible task of balancing military success with international diplomacy. The Americans had won the European theater, yet their unity with the Soviets, critical for reconstruction and peace, hung by a thread. The stakes were enormous. Vienna was more than a city. It was a symbol of Austria's strategic and cultural heart. Control over Vienna meant influence over political transitions, the handling of German officials, and the post-war occupation that would shape generations. Eisenhower knew that every decision, every message sent, and every troop movement would be scrutinized by allies and adversaries alike. If mismanaged, the capture of Vienna could escalate into a confrontation with the very forces who had been allies for years. Do you think boldness in war is always justified? Or should diplomacy take precedence even when victory seems certain? This is a question that Eisenhower wrestled with in real time, weighing the ambitions of one general against the fragile alliance with the Soviets. Patton's audacity forced Eisenhower into a position that no commander wants, choosing between immediate military glory and long-term strategic stability. The world believed the Allies were united, but as American troops crossed into Vienna, history watched the delicate threads of that unity begin to tremble. The actions of May 1945 were not just military maneuvers. They were statements about leadership, ambition, and the limits of alliance politics. Eisenhower understood that every report from the front lines, every message from Patton, carried implications far beyond the battlefield. Victory in Europe was close, but with Patton's advance, the definition of victory itself became uncertain. Could the United States assert influence without breaking trust? Could ambition and diplomacy coexist in the final days of a world war? These questions loomed over the Allied command, shaping decisions that would resonate for decades to come. As Patton's forces pushed deeper into Vienna, the diplomatic stakes escalated sharply. Reports reached Eisenhower daily, detailing the capture of key districts, bridges, and communication hubs. What on the surface appeared as a brilliant military maneuver soon revealed a more complex reality. Every American step was being watched not just by Allied allies, but also by the Soviets, whose armies were advancing from the east with claims already agreed upon at Yalta. Eisenhower understood immediately that this was more than a tactical victory. It was a delicate geopolitical minefield. Messages from the Soviet command arrived with increasing urgency. Ambassadors and military liaisons expressed confusion and veiled warnings. "Why are American troops in areas designated for Soviet occupation?" read one telegram. The tone was polite but firm, hinting that continued advancement could spark tensions. Eisenhower convened his senior advisors, weighing every option. He had to balance two seemingly opposing imperatives: supporting Patton's aggressive strategy, which had minimized casualties and swiftly captured the city, and preserving the fragile trust between the Allies. Every decision carried international weight, and miscalculation could transform cooperation into confrontation. Inside Patton's headquarters, the general remained unapologetic. Known for his boldness and disdain for bureaucratic caution, he argued that speed was paramount and that political arrangements should never hinder a tactical advantage. Patton's mindset was straightforward: seize the city, secure key positions, and let the political consequences follow. He believed that initiative, momentum, and decisive action defined victory, and he had little patience for the slow deliberations of diplomacy. Eisenhower, however, had to see the bigger picture. The balance of power in post-war Europe depended not only on military outcomes but also on political credibility. The tension between military ambition and diplomatic caution manifested in Eisenhower's private correspondence. In one memo, he praised Patton's speed and effectiveness, but stressed the necessity of careful coordination with Soviet allies. "We must avoid any perception that the United States seeks unilateral control," he wrote. These words reflected the fine line Eisenhower had to tread: support the heroism of his generals without undermining international agreements. He understood that Patton's victory in Vienna could be celebrated as a tactical masterpiece, but if interpreted incorrectly, it could become a source of mistrust, resentment, and potentially even conflict. Meanwhile, the Soviets advanced toward Vienna with their own intelligence and logistical priorities. Their commanders noted the unusual pace of the American movement, and some viewed it as an unwelcome challenge. Internal debates erupted within the Soviet high command. Should they accelerate their own advance, risk confrontation, or trust that diplomatic channels would contain the situation? The uncertainty created a tense atmosphere on both sides, with every decision scrutinized for its political, military, and symbolic significance. Eisenhower's role was no longer purely operational. He had become a mediator, diplomat, and strategist simultaneously. The consequences of missteps became apparent even before any confrontation occurred. American newspapers reported the capture of Vienna, highlighting the skill and audacity of Patton's troops. Across Europe, leaders and civilians debated the implications. Was the United States asserting dominance, or simply finishing the war efficiently? Historians later noted that public perception, combined with behind-the-scenes diplomatic pressure, added layers of complexity to what might have seemed a straightforward military maneuver. Eisenhower had to manage not only military logistics but also international reputation and credibility. This episode raises an important question. In times of great strategic opportunity, should leaders prioritize immediate tactical advantage, or must long-term political consequences always take precedence? Could Eisenhower have restrained Patton without undermining morale and momentum, or was the tension inevitable? These are questions that remain central to understanding leadership under pressure, the interplay of diplomacy and warfare, and the human factors that shape historical events. Comment below with your thoughts. Was Patton reckless, or was Eisenhower too cautious? By the time American forces fully secured Vienna, the message was clear. Decisive military action can bring rapid results, but it also risks creating diplomatic friction. Eisenhower's ability to navigate this tension would set the tone for post-war negotiations, occupation policies, and the unfolding balance of power in Europe. Patton's audacity had achieved immediate victory, But Eisenhower's leadership ensured that the broader consequences were managed, preventing a breakdown in the fragile alliance that had defeated Nazi Germany. The capture of Vienna by Patton's forces sent shockwaves not only through military headquarters but also across the political landscape of post-war Europe. What seemed like a tactical achievement immediately transformed into a complex set of consequences that would influence the reconstruction of Austria and the balance between the Allies. Eisenhower, fully aware of the delicate situation, began coordinating with diplomats, advisors, and liaison officers to mitigate any misunderstanding with the Soviets. The challenge was immense. How to celebrate a military victory without triggering international resentment? For the Soviets, the American presence in Vienna was a provocative signal. Commanders in Moscow debated whether Patton's advance represented overreach, a deliberate challenge to Soviet claims, or simply the natural speed of an audacious general. Some in the Soviet high command argued for a more aggressive stance, while others urged patience, relying on diplomatic assurances from Washington. Each telegram, radio transmission, and report became a piece in a high-stakes negotiation. The smallest misstep could have escalated into a confrontation between two nuclear-capable powers, a scenario that, at the time, seemed almost unimaginable, but not impossible. Back in the United States, news of Patton's advance captured public attention and fueled debates about military leadership and foreign policy. Newspapers highlighted his boldness, praising the speed, efficiency, and decisiveness of his maneuvers. Yet, not all commentary was flattering. Some political analysts and former military figures questioned whether the tactical gain was worth the potential strain on the Allied alliance. Eisenhower's leadership was scrutinized as well. Could he maintain control over a general whose audacity threatened to outpace diplomacy? This tension between public perception, military accomplishment, and international responsibility created a multifaceted fallout that extended far beyond the battlefield. Within Vienna itself, the consequences were tangible. Administrative control, civilian welfare, and the handling of German officials all depended on the occupying force. Patton's troops quickly established order, but Eisenhower ensured that American occupation policy did not undermine agreements with the Soviets. Decisions about security checkpoints, food distribution, and local governance had to reflect both immediate needs and long-term diplomatic strategy. Every move was a balancing act between asserting authority and demonstrating restraint, a lesson in leadership that combined military efficiency with political sensitivity. The incident also had a profound effect on the relationships between Allied generals. Patton's reputation for audacity grew, but so did the scrutiny of his actions. Eisenhower, by exercising measured oversight, reinforced the principle that individual brilliance must coexist with coordinated strategy. The fallout illustrated a broader lesson for future military and political leaders. Tactical victories, no matter how impressive, cannot be separated from the geopolitical consequences they generate. One of the most compelling questions emerging from these events concerns leadership under pressure. Should bold generals act first and justify later? Or must every action be subordinated to diplomatic agreements and international perception? Patton acted decisively, achieving a clear military success. Eisenhower responded with foresight, ensuring that success did not come at the cost of post-war stability. Viewers might ask themselves, would history have judged Patton differently if the Soviets had reacted aggressively? Could Eisenhower have restrained him without compromising the pace of victory? Comment below with your thoughts. How should leaders balance audacity with responsibility in moments of critical decision-making? In the months following the capture of Vienna, the consequences became clearer. The city remained under temporary American control, allowing for smoother administration and coordination with the incoming Soviet forces. Diplomats praised Eisenhower's handling of the situation, noting that his foresight prevented what could have been a serious international dispute. Meanwhile, Patton's reputation as a fearless and decisive commander continued to grow, but his actions also sparked discussions about the limits of individual initiative in a coalition war effort. The balance between military ambition and political prudence had been tested, and both men's choices would influence military doctrine, alliance management, and historical interpretation for decades. Ultimately, the capture of Vienna serves as a reminder that the consequences of bold actions extend far beyond immediate military success. Eisenhower and Patton exemplified two sides of leadership, one emphasizing strategic restraint and alliance management, the other prioritizing speed, decisiveness, and tactical dominance. The fallout affected international relations, public perception, and the lives of civilians within Vienna, demonstrating the complex interplay between war, diplomacy, and leadership. The lessons remain relevant today for anyone who studies conflict, power, and the human dimensions of strategy. The events of May 1945, when Patton's forces seized Vienna before the Soviets arrived, left a lasting imprint on military history, diplomacy, and public perception of leadership. In the immediate aftermath, the operation was hailed as a tactical triumph. Patton's rapid advance, meticulous planning, and boldness minimized casualties while securing a strategically vital city. Yet beyond the battlefield, the implications were far more complex. Eisenhower's careful oversight ensured that the victory did not escalate into international conflict, but the ripple effects of that audacious maneuver extended into the political, cultural, and strategic spheres for decades to come. Vienna became a symbol of both opportunity and tension. The swift American occupation showcased the capabilities of a determined military, highlighting the efficiency of mobility, coordination, and decisive command. However, it also tested the limits of alliance politics. For the Soviets, the Americans' unanticipated move was a challenge, a reminder that victory in war did not automatically translate into political dominance. Eisenhower's leadership bridged this divide. He demonstrated that while audacity on the battlefield can achieve immediate results, the broader legacy of leadership depends on foresight, negotiation, and maintaining trust among allies. The political consequences of Patton's actions were profound. Discussions in Washington and London examined the fine line between operational success and diplomatic repercussions. Questions arose. Had the Americans risked straining the fragile alliance with the Soviets for a tactical advantage? Could post-war occupation and reconstruction have been destabilized if diplomacy had failed? These reflections shaped the development of post-war military doctrine, emphasizing the integration of tactical prowess with strategic prudence. Commanders and political leaders would study this episode for decades, understanding that individual brilliance must coexist with coalition responsibilities. Public perception also evolved. Patton's legend as an unstoppable, fearless general grew, fueled by dramatic accounts of his leadership and the speed of his victories. At the same time, Eisenhower's reputation as a measured, thoughtful commander was reinforced. The contrast between the two men offered a study in leadership, one defined by audacity and relentless momentum, the other by strategic foresight and diplomatic acumen. The interplay of these qualities ensured that the capture of Vienna would be remembered not just as a military success, but as a lesson in balancing action with consequence. The consequences extended into the shaping of the early Cold War. Vienna, situated at the crossroads of East and West, became a focal point for occupation negotiations, intelligence operations, and the delicate balance between American and Soviet influence. Patton's rapid seizure highlighted the importance of initiative, while Eisenhower's careful management demonstrated the necessity of political awareness. The episode underscored the enduring truth of coalition warfare. Victories can be celebrated, but unchecked ambition risks undermining strategic stability. Reflecting on the human element, the soldiers on both sides experienced the operation in ways that would define their memories of the war. American troops admired Patton's decisive leadership, while civilians witnessed the rapid transition of control with minimal disruption. At the same time, Soviet soldiers and planners observed with a mixture of frustration and respect, recognizing the effectiveness of American operational planning. These experiences contributed to the historical record, revealing that the consequences of leadership extend beyond maps and battle plans. They affect real lives, perceptions, and the narrative of history itself. Finally, the lessons of Vienna continue to resonate. Boldness in war must be tempered by an understanding of broader consequences. Leadership is measured not only by immediate victories, but by the ability to manage relationships, preserve alliances, and anticipate the political, social, and cultural effects of action. Eisenhower and Patton's contrasting styles offer a timeless study: how ambition, strategy, and diplomacy intersect in moments of high stakes. Today, historians, military scholars, and students of leadership examine Vienna not simply as a captured city, but as a pivotal case in the complex dynamics of war, power, and legacy. The story of May 1945 raises an enduring question for modern leaders and historians alike. When bold action clashes with diplomatic prudence, which path ensures lasting influence, and which invites unforeseen consequences? Comment below with your perspective. Was Patton a hero whose initiative shaped history, or a maverick whose ambition risked alliance and stability? The answers reveal more than just history. They illuminate the eternal challenges of leadership under pressure.